Okay, hi, this is Jeremy, and I am joined by...
This is Tony Pugliese.
And we are the hosts and producers of the Paranormal Search radio show and podcast. The third member of the team, the president of the group, Ross Weidler, has recently passed away. And we want to dedicate this episode to him. And we wanted to have some things to say about Ross as well.
Yes, Ross believed in what he was doing. He put together the group Paranormal Search of Pennsylvania, in which we ran into many people who had done many podcasts, many radio shows, many celebrity paranormal investigators and friends, some of which had also passed. Ross's visions for creating a show and doing investigations, let's just say that he started something. He started something within us, planted the seed, and we plan on branching out and doing as much as we can in the field of investigations, in the field of research, and of course, podcasts. And maybe in the future, you're going to see some new horizons. Mm-hmm. We will miss Ross greatly, and Godspeed to you, Ross. We miss you. You've been my best friend for 5 years. Although sometimes I wanted to punch you, and there were other times I wanted to hug you. Man, you're a great guy, and you had a good heart.
This is the Paranormal Search radio show and podcast, discussing unexplainable events that shape our extraordinary world.
1, fire!
Our guest tonight is Dr. Raymond Keller, a retired history professor, has lived and worked in 44 different countries, and has been writing about UFOs and the paranormal since 1967. He received his doctoral degree from West Virginia University in 2011, focusing on various aspects of the Basque settlement of Venezuela, and his master's degree from the same institution in 2004, majoring in foreign language with an emphasis on magic realism in Latin American literature. He is the author of Venus Rising, and he has 5 books out. Ray, thank you so much for being on our show.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Always a pleasure to be with my friends at Paranormal Search.
Good to have you on, Ray.
Thank you, Tony. Pleasure to be on the program.
So, Ray, are you from Venus?
Well, I am. I'm from Bedford, Ohio, but I've been researching UFOs and particularly the extraterrestrial hypothesis since the mid-1960s, when I published the Flying Saucer Report between 1967 and 1972, and was a reporter also for the Bedford Times Register.
You experienced a close encounter with a flying saucer in Ohio State Park when you were young.
Yes, that's right. I was coming back from a camp out with some friends, and we sighted a flying saucer, traditional disc-shaped saucer, hovering about 1,000 feet above a railroad trestle in Walton Hills, Ohio. Well, that's what got me started in my interest, and I became a member of the Cleveland Ufology Project, which is directed by a former member of the Untouchables, a sketch artist. His name was Earl J. Neff, and he worked with the original Elliot Ness and the Untouchables team when Elliot Ness was the safety commissioner in Cleveland.
Ray, how old were you when you first had your sighting?
I was 15 years old at the time.
And when you and your friend published the Flying Saucer Report, that was around the same time, right? You were still a teenager?
Yes, that's correct. And we exchanged publications all around the world with Jean Duplantier in Willowdale, Ontario. He published Saucer, Space, and Science. with the Queensland UFO Research in Australia, with Gray Barker's Saucers and Unexplained Celestial Events Research Society in Clarksburg, and of course APRO, Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, to which I became a member.
Well, how many years did you guys publish that magazine?
That was 5 years. 5 years that it was published, and then I went into the Navy in 1972.
Oh boy, you've been in quite a few services.
Oh yes, I was in the Navy, and then I got out. I worked for the Mountain Bell Telephone Company. Then when my first child was coming along, I had gotten out of the phone company, and I went back in, but I went in the Army because the Navy wouldn't let me go in at the same pay grade. I'd have to start over again, but the Army put me in at the same pay grade, and then I was a voice intercept operator in the Spanish language, and traveled all around Central America and South America.
So you speak Spanish?
It's been a big help to me in UFO research because of so many sightings come from our neighbors to the south, and of course Mexico is the country with the largest amount of UFO sightings in the world. And Coral and Jim Lorenzen even published the first UFO book about UFOs in Latin America, UFOs over the Americas, it was called, and that's a classic. I highly recommend people to check out that book. Lots of occupant and humanoid sightings in that book, and of course all of the books by Coral and Jim Lorenzen, Flying Saucer Occupants and others. They're all classics.
Did you have any UFO sightings while you were in the military?
Yes, I had some over Goleta Island. Goleta Island is a communication site off the coast of Panama in what they call the San Blas Islands. The Native Americans that lived there, the San Blas Indians, and it looked like a disc, like a fireball, like a spinning fireball, kind of like a pinwheel, and it was going over La Bahia, over the bay, outside off the islands, and then heading toward Colon. And I did file a report, but they never got back to me on it.
So, at one point in your life, did you first gain an interest in the planet Venus and decide to start writing books on that? What was your motivation towards that?
One of the first UFO books that I had read was From Outer Space to You by Howard Menger, and I had traveled out to the East Coast to New York for the Flying Saucer Congress of Scientific Ufologists, and so I was very interested in that. I met Dominic Lucchesi and met some of the people associated with the Saucerian press and everything, and so I was very, very interested in that. And then I had also read all of George Adamski's books. After I read Flying Saucers Have Landed, I read his other two books, and I had actually written to some of the astronomers that he mentioned in there. that were talking about life on Venus and different phenomena associated with Venus. And so I began to wonder whether or not the government was telling the truth about not only life on Venus, but also all the other planets in our solar system. Because, of course, Adamski and Menger, they both said that they believe that all these planets were inhabited either with indigenous life or life that was transported there from other solar systems, that they had bases in our own solar system and even on the backside of the moon. And one of the people that I corresponded with and traded publications with was a man named Gabriel Green, and he was the president of Amalgamated Flying Saucer Clubs of America. So when I was living out in California, I moved out to California and was very involved with Gabriel Green and his group, and he would interview all the contactees, and so I got to know many of them, and to investigate their stories as well. And so I put a lot of stock into the contactees and their claims. I certainly see by the papers and scientific journals and everything that a lot of things that they said are being vindicated.
You really have 3 impressive books, which I love. Venus Rising, A Concise History of the Second Planet. How long did it take you to research that book, and how long did it take before you were able to publish it?
It took a year to write it, and the reason that I wrote it was I was in the Veterans Hospital in Pittsburgh, and I went there for a quadruple bypass surgery. And when I was out, they actually took my heart out of my body to work on it, and I was suspended with some kind of artificial lung and heart and everything to keep me going while they were doing the operation. But whether I was in an etheric state or a dream state or what, I don't know. But I felt that I was in a ring of light and being levitated above the earth, and I was kind of dizzy because I couldn't see a floor and I couldn't see a ceiling, and I was just trying to hold on to this ring, and I could see the earth below me, the moon off in the distance, and all the twinkling stars and everything, and I encountered a teenage version of myself, and then every time that he talked and I looked at him, he was wearing a different kind of clothing from a different era in time, and then I understood that was my oversoul, and those were past incarnations. And he offered me the opportunity to either go with him to a higher level, like to Venus Etheria, or to go back to Earth and finish writing the Venus Rising series of books. So that I chose to come back and do that.
Wow, that would explain how you became so spiritual. You're described as the doctor of history, magic realism, mythology, and theology. And for the listeners out there who don't know, you're known as Cosmic Ray. Is that how you got that nickname?
I was called Cosmic Ray in high school, and because I published the the Flying Saucer Report.
Oh, okay. So that's been that far back. I thought it was okay. I thought it was a lot later than that.
Right, and
Well,
so I was on all these radio programs and Alan Douglas show and Pete Franklin and all these shows in Cleveland, all these talk shows, and with Earl Neff, I went investigating with Earl to up to Michigan and all over the tri-state area, checking out UFO sightings. So people knew me, and at first they were calling me my favorite Martian because because there was a TV show with Ray Walston and Bill Bixby.
I used to love that show.
Kind of like it was the resident alien of its day.
Yeah, I love that show too. I watch that every Wednesday night. Yeah.
and then because I wrote about all the other planets as well, and these different UFO cases and saucer landings and things, so that they just said, "Oh, cosmic ray."
Ray, I talked to your friend Rob Potter. We had a very good conversation. He seems like a nice guy. He really likes you.
Oh yes, he's great. He's done a lot to help me with these books and getting the message out, and he sponsored my appearance at several UFO conventions or UFO meetings. We had 2018 From Venus with Love up at Mount Shasta, and so I was the featured speaker along with Omnek Onek. She's an ambassador from Fifth Dimensional Venus, and then Louis Martens. He's a contactee with Venusians from Bolivia. Yeah, we even did some programs with him on exopolitics with the gentleman Lampremont Weber up in Canada, and we did it in Spanish. There was an artist from Mexico who did UFO artwork and like celestial paintings of life on other planets and things. So we had a really great show.
Well, Ray, getting back to your books, you mentioned the Venus inhabitants. They live in Dimension X. They have bodies of light, and they're non-specific genders. They assume human form to interact with us. They are six-dimensional beings who lower their vibrations to 4 dimensions to live with us, and many of them are living on Earth right now. They were reincarnated as new beings, as opposed to what they were at the planet Abahar, which many people don't know is the ancient name for Venus.
Yes. There's Venusians at multiple levels, vibrational levels or dimensional levels, including our own third dimensional or physical level, and those are beings that exist primarily in underground facilities on the planet, and then there are beings in what I call Venus Etheria. Mm-hmm. And I've been writing a series of articles for Lon Strickler's Phantoms and Monsters website recently called the Riley Crabb Revelations. Now, Riley Crabb was one of the directors of Borderland Sciences Research Foundation, and that was his specialty, was writing about interdimensional entities from this region of Etheria, or what I call Dimension X.
And I know that the Venusians, when they first came to Earth, many of them gifted us with honeybees and human hybrids and so forth. But are these hybrids are they more ethereal, or are they actually physical? Because based on your books, if I'm understanding this correctly, the Venusians, some of them live on a physical plane. Others chose to live on an ethereal plane. Which ones live underground?
These are on the physical plane, and these Venusians are very similar to us physiologically. There's some variation in the DNA, but long ago our solar system was colonized by beings from a planet in the Tau Ceti system called Norca, and they traveled the distance of space looking for a new home because their planet was drying up. It was a process of desertification. Everything was turning into a vast desert, and their sun was expanding. It was becoming a red star, and it was they had to go and find a new home, and so they came here, and they were pleased to be able to settle on Venus, which at the time the indigenous intelligent life form, were these very large bees, and it's a long story about the interaction between the bees and the Venusians, but I explore that in all these Venus books. And then there's actual ties and proof of the bee-Venus connection throughout ancient history. And then I document all this as well from the history of the Romans, Roman Empire, the Greeks, the Egyptians, and esoteric societies, also in Islam, the Sufis.
Yes,
and,
yes, you do, and you do it quite well.
Thank
I fell in
you,
love with the book from the very beginning, from the first couple pages, and it was very interesting how you put everything together. And it went as far back as the Romans, and even as far back as I forget her name. I think it's Victoria or something. She was a Venusian who battled aliens here on Earth.
Oh yes, yes. That was over the Mediterranean basis, and it explores battles that took place on Earth, over Asia as well, in India with the spacecraft called the Vimanas. We were invaded by beings from Draconis star system, from Orion, reptilians, and these battles took place all over the Earth between these Norcan human-looking Venusian settlers coming to help defend the Earth, and so they're all tied into these legends of ancient mythology as well.
Ray, did the Venusians influence the architectural design of our megaliths that are still here?
Oh yes, and there are a lot of clues. In megalithic structures and so forth. I just recently helped Luis Fernando Mostajo Martens in Bolivia. He wrote a book called The Dragon Lines, and it's all about crop circles and megalithic structures and their connection to the Venusians and other higher dimensional beings that we perceive to be angelic, almost angelic in nature, and so that book will explore a lot of these things, and that'll be coming out in the next few months.
Now, you said all of these, some of the rulers in Venus, like Omnek, Dolores Barrios, and there's one more I can't think of. She wears the red beret, the brunette. Ruby something? I can't remember her name.
Aura Rain.
That's it, Aura Rain. All of them had different bodies or different forms in Venus.
Yes.
On Earth.
Yes, and either that or they have emissaries on Earth who can serve as an instrument, or if you will, a channel for them.
When you had your experience, when you met your former selves, were you then maybe become part of the Abaharians?
Oh yeah,
or Venusians, as they're now called?
Oh yes, yes, and I was able to understand various incarnations of coming from the planet planet Abahar or Venus on a mission on the Earth through various incarnations, and then on page 250, beginning on page 252 of Venus Rising, I write about how others can explore their own starseed connection.
Yes.
And so it goes through various characteristics, physical characteristics, moods, ideas that you may hold, and beliefs that you may hold, and different connections that you could draw to identify your own celestial home.
Yeah, could you explain more about that? That was going to be my next question. The star seed activation. It says the Venusian transmitter is always turned on and beamed towards Earth. Many of those defined here on Earth called star seeds are constantly being awakened to new metaphysical reality. It sounds like you may have been one of them, but is that happening now at this very time, or is that going to be in the near future?
Oh no, it's happening. It's happening now, and rather than a mass ascension, what you see is that as many people become awakened to their true celestial nature, many of them are just bodily lifted off the earth, and you just don't see them after a certain point. So in my Venus books, you explore the physical, emotional, extraterrestrial experiences, out-of-body experiences, metaphysical connections and experiences, and as well as psychic development. And I found that most people who are into paranormal phenomena and research,
Yes.
If they manifest these characteristics that I go into great detail in, that they definitely have a starseed connection, and it will help them to understand the experiences that they're going through, and where they are from, and they'll better know where they are going.
Well, I know you have a paper that it asks you about your political background, your emotional characteristics, and so forth, to see if you may have a starseed connection. It's on a green paper that you gave me a long time ago with this first book, Venus Rising, concise history of the second planet. It's like a questionnaire to determine your percentage of Venusian extraterrestrial connectivity.
Oh yes, and I sit down with individuals and just help them go over that and explore those different avenues.
When you talked about, Jeremy was asking about all that our architecture having to do maybe with the Venusians. They're finding architecture like that on Mars, from what I understand now. It's being kept from us. But they found like bits and pieces, like some kind of cataclysm happened up there. And there's bits and pieces of what looks to be statues and pieces of buildings that exist here on Earth, like from the Roman and cultures, the Corinthian cultures, and other such cultures. Is it possible? What's the connection between Mars and Venus? Are they pretty much the same beings, or are they just separate from one another?
They do have a common ancestry, and there's also a great infusion of other extraterrestrials throughout the history of the Earth, Mars, and also the Saturnian system with all its moons, the largest being Titan, and so forth. of extrasolar beings coming into our solar system on the rim. We're on the rim of the galaxy, of course, and so it's kind of like the Wild West out here. And there's been lots of extraterrestrials that have come and gone. And what we're talking about on Mars with these ruins and these artifacts and deserted cities,
And don't forget rivers.
Yeah,
Rivers
yes.
and waterways up there that they're hiding from us.
Right, on the surface,
Yeah.
and even water on the moon, which has recently been leaked out by NASA. We know now that there's a moon, that on the moon, at the south pole of the moon, there's a lake that's the size of Puerto Rico. We know that there's water on the moon. We know that there's all kind of structures and domes that have been photographed by ourselves and the Ranger probes and the Russian Luna probes of domes and towers and so forth on the far side of the moon. Well, all of this is a vindication of, especially like the devastation that we see on Mars. When George Adamski was on his in 1959, he went on a world tour and he was in Australia, and he was talking to Martin Gottschall of UFO Research Queensland, who is a physicist. He's an astrophysicist and everything, and was talking about cities on Mars that are still on the surface before they went underground. But there was in the Bible when it talks about the Great War in the heavens and how that impacted on the earth, and all the civilizations on Earth have accounts of these wars between the so-called gods in the heavens, and these were extraterrestrials battling over who would control our solar system. So we had the forces of the Federation of Planets, which is 601 planets or worlds from 51 star systems.
So
and then you had beings largely from Orion and some other star sectors that were allied, trying to come and take over our solar system.
Okay, so this devastation was not caused by the fault of Mars?
No. And there was a world that was destroyed in our own solar system that existed between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter, and some of the remnant is there today in the asteroid belt. But this was a very Earth-like paradisical planet called Maldek, and they reached a very high level of civilization, and there was extraterrestrial influence that divided the world into two camps, and they had a battle and destroyed their world with weapons of mass destruction, and so some of the survivors had ended up in colonies here on Earth, Atlantis, Lemuria, and everything, and they carried their feud here to our planet.
Yeah, I have stuff about the Lemurians and the wars, and I always saw the planet Saturn as a dead planet, the ice rings or whatever they are around the planet. Is that possible that's debris from devastation that was caused on that planet, and not really ice rings at all?
No, they're actually ice, largely ice crystals, and but they were from a planet that was crushed into small particles and everything. It was a moon that didn't make it.
What about the Atlanteans? Here on Earth, they were associated with the Lemurians and the Venusians. Were they also part of this devastating intergalactic war that went on in our solar system and other solar systems?
Oh yes. There had been rogue elements from Venus and other planets that had come down on Earth and had intervened. Also, survivors from Maldek and these other worlds that made themselves the god kings and the priests and so forth in the ruling class that infiltrated the ruling class of Atlantis and Lemuria, and then to keep that from happening again and to restore the sovereignty of Earthlings to develop their own civilization. The Confederation of Planets intervened and took these people off the Earth, rounded them up, and removed them from the Earth. Those that weren't destroyed in the destruction of Atlantis and Lemuria, the final vestiges of it were destroyed about 12,000 BC.
Wow. Well, thanks for the questions. I'm sorry I'm asking so many questions, guys. But
I've read all
three
problem.
of these books, and I've always wanted to talk to you about this.
Well, this is very good because what I'm basing a lot of this on, as well as you could confirm it, is the works of Helena Blavatsky and Alice K. Bailey. One of the first books that Helena Petrovna Blavatsky wrote back in 1885 was History of a Planet, which was all about the secret history of Venus.
Yeah, I understand she mentioned Venus. She was born in 1831 and died in 1891, correct?
Right, that's right.
Okay.
She was the co-founder of the Theosophical Society, and as well as her History of a Planet, Isis Unveiled, and many other books. There's esoteric knowledge that had been lost from humankind for countless ages. She went up into to India twice, and on her second trip to India, she made it into the Himalayas, where she met with ascended masters and had a translation of the Book of Dizan and all kinds of information. Then Alice K. Bailey wrote a book called The Cosmic Fire, and it mentions everything about Venus on almost every other page, and it's just a tremendous source of lost knowledge and esoteric information. But with Helena Blavatsky's book on A History of a Planet, I thought that although it was 135 years later, that a comprehensive book about the history of Venus needed to be written, an updated version of Helena Blavatsky's work. So that's how Venus Rising came to be.
I read some of hers, but they're not as interesting as you. In fact, I've been told, and me and Ross, we argue about life on Venus all the time. Ross wrote a report about how hot Venus is, and it's impossible for any life to be on Venus, etc., etc. I don't know if I agree with that completely, and then your books kind of brought me, that's how we were always taught in high school, to believe. There's no life on Venus, there's no life on Mars, life on the moon, there's nothing going on. But see, books like yours and hers and other such writers, yours in particular, which really impressed me, they actually made me think about maybe this is quite possible that our past and our ancestry might be tied to the Abaharians and the other civilizations. And who's to say? Maybe that cloud cover over Venus is a way to keep enemies out, and it's just a ruse.
Oh yes, I'm glad that you brought that up because in my most recent book, The Vast Venus Conspiracy, I really go into detail about the true scientific findings that I've amassed from personal interviews with scientists researching the planet Venus, even from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and from the Russian space program. And it's all documented there about the bifurcation of gases in the Venusian atmosphere, the true temperature at 84 to 125 degrees Fahrenheit, the atmospheric, the true atmospheric pressure, the heat, the so-called heat, was measured from the electrical heat in the ionosphere and not on the surface, and people can see for themselves the true story about what's going on in outer space, what's going on the moon, what's going on Mars, and NASA's hiding of this information. It's out there, and you could find it if you diligently look for it. And of course, I've saved people a lot of time if they buy my Venus books, and then they could read it for themselves.
Yes, I would encourage everybody out there, every listener, to buy the Venus books from Dr. Raymond Andrew Keller II, who we affectionately call Cosmic Ray. That's what we know him as. Yeah, I would encourage that too. And me and Ross have debates all the time about planetary life around our solar system and everything. But and he's saying, well, why is NASA hiding all of this? That's the argument. Why is NASA hiding if there is structures on Mars, the Moon, if there is life on Venus, and there were contacts with Venusians on Earth like Valiant Thor and other such individuals, Omnek, Dolores Barrios. He wants to know, and I want to know too, why would they hide this? What's your opinion, Ray, that they're hiding all this information from us? Why not just come out and say, hey guys, there's life on Mars, there's water on the Moon, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, they're waiting for our spiritual maturity to catch up with our technology, because right now it's like we are children playing with matches in a dynamite shack.
So I thought we're not capable of understanding this yet. We panic.
Right. We have this. Exactly, Tony. We have this aggression that we're going to bring with us into outer space, and probably initially they're going to remain cloaked, and they'll hide themselves as much as possible. But there'll be a time coming when they may be forced to more reveal themselves. But right now, isn't it? They do have operatives on Earth, and they are working behind the scenes to protect their interests as well as to help us along. They're in contact with certain scientists and individuals in various capacities that are promoting peace, understanding, and cooperation here on the Earth.
I sure hope so.
Are there teachings in theosophy that prepare you for meetings with other beings?
That's interesting that you asked that question, because I've noticed that 90% of the contactees have either studied theosophy or are members of a theosophical society, and this is very good, because the philosophy of the Theosophical Society, their three objects, correspond quite neatly with the objectives of extraterrestrials, and that is number one, to promote the brotherhood and sisterhood of humankind, with all beings throughout the universe. And of course, theosophy teaches that intelligence fills the immensity of space. Even the Egyptians, they recognized that even rays of light from the sun were sources of illumination and some kind of beings imparting knowledge on an etheric level. You see those paintings in the or the cartouches in the pyramids where they show living rays of light and like tongues of fire coming down from the sun, providing a literal illumination of knowledge beside light, beside being a source of light. So that's one thing, and that we're not alone. And then the second object of theosophy is to recognize that knowledge isn't limited to one area. That like Eric von Däniken, for example, he looks at history, mythology, comparative religions, chemistry, everything. Everything is in the mix. So when we look at the acquisition of knowledge through just one area of research, it's like putting blinders on, so we don't really get the full picture. We have to take in all avenues of research and find the connections, find the linkages, and that's very important. And then the third object of theosophy is to develop the powers that are latent within us. And we know that our brothers and sisters of other planets have developed powers and abilities that are far beyond those that we have with our five senses here on Earth. But we see some glimpses of that. Some people have extrasensory perception, some have telekinesis, some have the ability to bilocate, some have gifts of prophecy and so forth, and so we could develop these powers that are within us, even like some of the yogis in India, where they could levitate and everything. And we could actually do this. We could move the vibrational structure of our own atoms to higher frequencies and move into higher dimensional realms, because we are, as somebody said, one philosopher said that we're just spiritual beings exploring the physical universe. So we're here. We have these bodies. We have these physical bodies, but that's just a vehicle. That's just a spacesuit for us to operate in this terrestrial environment. But we're really celestial beings. We're just here visitors. We're just passing through.
And do you think that early civilizations were much more compatible with maybe using the third eye, in a sense, having a connection to the powers and vibrations of the Earth?
Oh yes, yes. Some have developed vast powers of intellect and other powers where they could channel cosmic forces. The problem with this at our current level of development here on the Earth is that if we take any kind of power or force, like let's take atomic energy. We could use the power of the atom to power every vehicle, every city on Earth, and to create a paradise, a literal paradise here here on the Earth with a boundless source of energy and power for a planetary grid, or we could use that same power to put it on the tips of nuclear missiles and destroy, level entire cities, maybe even continents. So it's the intentions of the human heart, of the individual that's wielding the power, because power is a neutral thing, and it's just how it's directed that worries the Venusians. Back in the late 1950s and the early 1960s, there was a project. There was a secret project called Project 119 in the United States, and then there was an equivalent project in Russia. It was to detonate atomic weapons on the moon, and all the documentation for that is in my second book, The Final Countdown: Rockets to Venus. And the Venusians had to take active measures to stop those, because nobody checked. Nobody was checking to see if the moon was inhabited, if there were structures and inhabitants on the moon where they wanted to detonate these devices. And a professor from University of California at San Diego made a plea to the United Nations that we not send any nuclear or atomic weapons into space, that we not militarize outer space. And that began a movement that in 1966 the United Nations passed a resolution demilitarizing outer space. Although I don't know how securely some of the nations have followed that protocol, but that was done, and that was one of the objectives of Valiant Thor's visit to President Eisenhower in the late 1950s.
I did some research on Venus. They say Venus is a hot, hellish, and volcanic planet, correct?
Just like on the Earth, there are parts of Venus that are volcanic. Yes.
And the temperature goes to 867 Fahrenheit.
Okay, the temperature that they were measuring, beginning with the Mariner 2 probe, was electrical heat generated in the ionosphere.
Okay.
So it's not actually on the surface of the planet.
No, it's not on the surface. We have to remember that with the very earliest space probe to reach Venus, the Mariner 2, there was a radiometer that was on board the Mariner that was put there by Carl Sagan, and it only measured 3 points along the limb of the Venusian atmosphere. So it was capturing measurements of electrical heat. Now they've pointed similar instrumentation at the Earth, and they measured temperatures up to 3,000 degrees in our atmosphere as well, of electrical electrical heat. In fact, one of the early satellites in the 1950s, I think it was it may have been in the late 1950s, reported back that life as we know it couldn't exist on the Earth. And then let's look at that also. Let's take a look at life as we know it, so called. Now, here on the Earth, there are beings, or there are creatures that live at the bottom of the Mariana Trench in the South Pacific Ocean, and there are volcanic vents down there with temperatures of 935 degrees Fahrenheit and equivalent atmospheric pressure of 1,000 atmospheres, and 100 atmospheres, and yet there's life that thrives down there.
So what you're saying is that life goes on no matter what, whether it's freezing cold in the Antarctic or whether it's down at the bottom of the ocean. Because I agree with that.
Right, and so we're talking about life that evolved under similar conditions as on the Earth, that's existing on Venus, and with a 3 million year jump start in their cosmic evolution, even if the conditions have deteriorated substantially, there's no reason why they couldn't adapt. I mean, we have the technology today that we could put people and habitats on the moon or Mars or other planets. So what's to preclude advanced civilizations, extraterrestrial civilizations, from doing the same? That's why I always call NASA, NASA, never a straight answer, because they're never going to come out and tell us that there are advanced beings on other planets, and all of the planets of our solar system and beyond. The immensity of space is filled with different beings. And my most recent book is Lady Columba Venus Revelations. There are drawings and diagrams there that were made by Annabelle Krebs, Lady Columba, a contactee secretary to Truman Bethlehem in the late 1950s and early 1960s. And these have drawings in there and sketches of meetings of the Confederation of Planets with all these different beings, not only humans and humanoids that look very much like us, but also these various hybrid beings. And even there's even a picture in there in my book by Annabelle Krebs at the council meeting of a blue avian.
Oh yeah, I think there was Rob Potter showed us a painting of a blue avian with some bee creatures and some Venusians.
Right.
On that video I saw you on the other day.
Yes, that's the one. That was done by Columba Krebs, and she was also a great artist and a social activist as well. Yeah. She spent a lot of time. She spent a lot of time in India, and she traveled all over the world in search of esoteric knowledge, and her adventures that she had on the far side of the moon, at saucer bases under the ocean, and inside the Earth, in vast caverns inside the Earth. And
because Ross, not to cut you short, but Ross wanted to debate all this. There's heat on Venus, so there couldn't possibly be any life there. There's pressure on Venus. Pressure. What did you say it was, Ross? You have it written down there.
A moment. Venus has 90 times the atmospheric pressure than on Earth.
So that doesn't really mean anything, right? There's pressure in the ocean. There's beings down there.
Right, and so we find that equivalent pressure. It's right here right here on Earth. But let's take the Venera 4 probe that went there from Soyuz Sovietsky Sochalicheskaya Respublik when the Russians sent there. The Venera 4 showed that the overall atmospheric pressure on Venus, as measured by their probe, was only eight times that of the Earth. They discovered water vapor in the Venusian atmosphere, and toward the regions around the North Polar regions, they discovered vegetation. This is documented in Soviet science journals, and a median temperature of 84 degrees Fahrenheit, kind of like California.
Okay, so and just not to get off the subject, but I just need a yes or no answer on this. I wasn't clear on this, but whenever a probe was sent to Venus, have they ever actually made it through that cloud cover to get to the surface to look at anything?
Yeah, Russia did.
Russia did?
Oh, yes, and I have all the photographs from the Russians in the Vast Venus Conspiracy, and there's one particular region that looks. It has a wide variety of different rock formations, and it looks like some kind of moss or vegetation is growing in there, and in the distance it even looks like there's some kind of a lake. And I own land in New Mexico, in Gadel, New Mexico, and it looks very similar to that. This land that I have is up in Horse Mountain, and it's in the western part of New Mexico, northwestern part off of Route 60, and it overlooks the very large array. But it looks like land out there in New Mexico.
Okay, so it don't look any different than the land in Earth or on Mars, like
Right, yeah,
being shown anyway.
Right, that's
Rocks
right,
and
Tony.
sand and red skies, which is BS.
And the thing about it is if it was 93 atmospheres, and that it would be so dark that you wouldn't be able to see anything, and the pressure would be so great that it would distort everything. But it looks like a calm, sunny day out in the New Mexico desert.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Ray. We're kind of running out of time here, but Ross had a couple things he wanted to read to you about the toxic atmosphere on Venus that makes it impossible.
What I wanted to read here, they talk about the temperatures of hundreds of degrees and is clocked by a cloud that contains droplets of corrosive
sulfuric acid.
Sulfuric acid. A few have focused on the rocky planet as a habitable for something to live.
Okay, well,
what do you think of that one?
Because of the biomagnetic qualities of the gases in the Venusian atmosphere, we see different components at different layers, and of course, there's a higher content of sulfur in certain areas of Venus, because especially where we're dealing with a volcanic plateau. Much the same thing if we sent the probe down to, say, Krakatoa or to any of the volcanoes in the Siberian, on the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia. So, there are different environments on Venus, but recent discoveries by the British Astronomical Society of phosphines in the Venusian atmosphere indicate the presence of a complex ecosystem, that there are organisms that can only produce phosphines in the quantities that have been discovered there. Also, a recent discovery on Venus shows that there's intense lights that are moving across the dark side, the side that's facing away from the sun. It's supposed to be dark, and there's these intense lights that are moving and flickering in the atmosphere, and I wrote about in all my Venus books about these huge swarms of bees and other biofluorescent insects that swarm and multiply in the Venusian atmosphere. So here's another vindication of the information that's in my Venus books.
So Ross, what do you think? You had
Are you convinced yet, Ross?
Are you convinced that there might be life on Venus? Because some of those conditions on Venus are
I
very
don't know.
common here on Earth as well.
I have so much I want to read to him about Venus. I don't know.
Well, he seems to have the answers. And okay, I agree with you, Ray, because I think that we have a lot of terrain on this planet that can be treacherous. I mean, no matter where that probe might have gone somewhere, it's like a probe that was probing Earth, and maybe that probe might end up on Antarctica. It doesn't mean that the entire planet's made up of ice.
So, Ray, where can our listeners find you online?
Okay, the best way to find me is just check with Amazon. Just type in Keller Venus in Amazon, and they'll list all my books. And then, of course, once Paranormal Search gets to having meetings again after this cancel culture is over, I'm always a frequent attendee at the meeting there at the Lower Paxton Hall in Harrisburg. And then if you read Lon Strickler's phantomsandmonsters.com, I usually have an article there every week, and it contains my email address, rkeller1 at mix.wvu.edu, and I'll be very happy to answer any email. So that's rkeller and then just the number 1 at mix.wvu.edu.
Well, Ray, it's been great having you. We really got it.
Like I say, I'll get back to you on the meetings.
Yeah, we'll talk to you about this again sometime. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Yeah,
Ray, you're awesome. Thank you so
you're
much.
awesome, man. I love you.
Just be careful out there, will you, Ray?
Thank you, my friends. Cosmic blessings to you and all, and all listeners to the program.
Thank you for joining us this episode. If you would like to attend our monthly meetings, you may do so by visiting the Lower Paxton Municipal Building in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We meet the second Wednesday of every month between the hours of 7 and 9 p.m. Please visit our Facebook page, that is Paranormal Search of Pennsylvania. There you will find links to our YouTube channel and website.